Dengue in fever. Dengue fever in children. I am Dr. Nisarga, Professor of Pediatrics, Department of Pediatrics. Dengue fever in children is the topic for today. Dengue is one of the mosquito borne diseases, and it is one of the leading causes of hospitalization and death in children. Dengue occurs in all ages. It is more in children than in adults. Not only the incidence, the severity also. Globally, more than 20 million cases in a year, with death close to 24,000. Clinical manifestation varies from asymptomatic cases to symptomatic cases, and these symptoms are either typical or atypical. As I have already told, it is a mosquito borne disease, and caused by a virus, belongs to the family Flaviviridae, genus Flavivirus, and there are 4 serotypes: dengue 1, dengue 2, dengue 3, and dengue 4. Among these serotypes, there is no cross protection. Only the immunity a person develops is specific for that particular serotype, doesn't give cross protection against another serotype. Epidemiology. The mosquito name is Aedes aegypti. It is a daytime biter, breeds in fresh water or clean water. Unlike the malarial disease mosquito, that is Anopheles mosquito, that breeds in dirty water. And epidemics are common in areas close to the equatorial line in the world, like Latin America and African countries, Asia, Australia. These are the mosquitoes, Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus. Look at them closely. They have got stripes like tiger. And because of the stripes, they are also called as tiger mosquitoes. It doesn't mean that they bite tiger. Because of the stripes, they are called tiger mosquitoes. The pathogenesis is not fully understood, but one thing is clear. With the infection, antibodies are produced. Once antibodies are produced, there is protection against that particular serotype. There are 2 types of antibodies produced. One is neutralizing antibody that gives protection. Another one is enhancing antibody. And these enhancing antibodies enhances the immune response in the subsequent infection by another serotype. So that cytokine response is very high in them, leading to plasma leak and shock and other complications. In other words, the first infection may be apparently normal or not much of complications. The subsequent infection with the other serotypes is always dangerous. And it is because of rapid activation of the complement system by these enhancing antibodies. The damage is due to capillary leak. There is an increased permeability of, of the vascular uh, wall into the interstitial compartment. The fluid goes into the interstitial compartment, resulting in hemoconcentration, hypovolemia, and as a result of that, there is an increased cardiac work. And though heart tries to compensate, so goes into tissue hypoxia, uh, end up in metabolic acidosis and hypernatremia. So shock is the main cause of morbidity and mortality. Next cause is increased bleeding, and then another complication is organ dysfunction. Either the organ may be liver, lungs, kidney, heart. Dengue fever is classified as dengue, dengue with warning signs, and severe dengue. Dengue fever, the probable cases of dengue, how it is diagnosed? It is easy. The person living in the endemic area or visited the endemic area recently, if he develops a fever, especially during the monsoon, rainy season, one has to suspect any fever during rainy season un- unless until it is ruled out dengue. And in addition to fever, if he develops any of the following two criteria, you can make a reasonable diagnosis of dengue, the probable diagnosis of dengue. Fever in dengue, it is a biphasic. Initially, it will be there for 3 to 5 days. After 5 days, the fever usually comes down. But when the fever comes down, if at all if they go for complication and occurs during this time when the fever touches the breast, that I will discuss you a little later. But now to diagnose dengue, either the person is living in the endemic area or visited the endemic area with fever during monsoon or rainy season with any of the two following criteria, that is nausea or vomiting, rash, aches and pains. The body pain is such that it is also called by the term it is break bone fever. The, the amount of pain due to myalgia, viral myalgia, is compared with if there is a bone fracture, the person experiences a severe pain, it is almost equivalent to that. As I told you, it is also called as break bone fever. Tourniquet test, because the platelet goes down, if the tourniquet is positive, leukopenia less than 4,000. When any of these things are there, you can reasonably make a diagnosis of probable dengue. In addition to this, if you find a warning sign, I will read out those warning signs. Then it suggests you or gives you a hint that it is not just dengue and going for complications or might develop complications. Warning signs. What are those? Abdominal pain or tenderness, persistent vomiting, clinical fluid accumulation either in the peritoneal cavity or in the pleural space, mucosal bleed, lethargy, restlessness suggesting CNS involvement, liver enlargement more than 2 centimeters, and increased hematocrit and decreased platelet count. If you notice any of this, it is a warning sign. So now we have noted two types: dengue without warning signs, dengue with warning signs. And the third type is severe dengue. This severe dengue has got a manifestation. It is a severe form of dengue when there is a dengue shock syndrome, that is a plasma leak, severe plasma leakage, leading to severe shock, that is called dengue shock syndrome, fluid accumulation either in the pleural cavity or in the peritoneal cavity, compressing the lungs. The second criteria to say it is severe dengue is severe bleeding. And third criteria when there is organ dysfunction or impairment. That organ may be either liver, lungs, kidney, or heart. Any organ or CNS. It could be. Or the laboratory test, abnormal laboratory test, especially liver AST and ALT when it is more than 1000, and impaired consciousness or altered sensory. So there are three criteria to say there are severe dengue, either shock, bleeding, or organ impairment. This is a slide to understand the dengue disease pattern. As I had already told, usually the dengue fever lasts for only 1 week. If anybody has fever more than a week, think that it is less likely to be dengue. In the beginning, look at the first column. 3 to 4 days only fever is there with myalgia and other vague symptoms, which are not specific to this disease. And day 4 or 5, the temperature touches the baseline, and that is the time, if at all, if there is any complication occurs. In all other diseases, please note this point, infectious diseases, when the fever subsides, it is a sign of recovery. But here, contrary to this, when the fever touches the baseline, one should be more alert to watch the complication happening. Look at the second column, potential clinical issues. Initially, there is a dehydration only, but when the temperature touches the baseline, that is the time either they go for shock or bleeding or organ impairment. That we call it as severe dengue. Those who are going for severe dengue, that happens when the temperature touches the baseline. Majority, they improve without going for these three complications. But those who go for this complication, that occurs when the temperature touches the baseline. Please note this point. Then after seventh day, the fluid which has gone out of the vascular compartment start coming back into the vascular compartment. Reabsorption of the fluid. And in addition, if you are giving fluid from outside, there are chances for overload, fluid overload. Coming to the laboratory changes, look at here. Two important parameters, hematocrit and platelet. The hematocrit goes up, dotted line. The reason, the plasma leakage is there, hemoconcentration occurs. And the platelet, for various reasons, it may be bone marrow suppression or increased platelet additions to the vessel wall, because vessel walls are inflamed. The platelet decreased and they are qualitatively also less compared to the normal person. So the platelet goes down, the hematocrit goes high. That happens during the period, coincides with the temperature when it touches the baseline. And during recovery, after the first week, the platelet comes up, the hematocrit goes down. That means when the fluid comes back, they go in opposite direction, these two parameters. Coming to the serology, last column. Initially, 3 to 4 days, there is a viremia, coincides with the fever. And 5 days to 7 days, the viremia comes down. The serological tests are going to be positive to start with. NS1 antigen will be positive in the beginning, a little later IgM, then little later IgG. Look at here. So first phase is febrile, second phase is critical, third is recovery phase. The critical phase, I again emphasize this phase, usually temperature comes to baseline. That is the time one should be very watchful to look for this complication. What are those complications? Shock, bleeding, and organ impairment. Investigations. When there is a viral infection, not only dengue, either you have to isolate the virus, which we don't do in a normal practice in our hospital or only in the research laboratories they do it. Okay, we'll not discuss that much. Nucleic acid detection, ideally that has to be done RT-PCR to detect the nucleic acid detection. But in our setup it is not available. And only thing is we have a rapid test for NS1 antigen. That is an antigen detection. NS1 antigen is a protein secreted by the virus in the initial period, and if you detect that, that gives an indirect clue that there is a dengue infection. Result is available within minutes. That's why it's called rapid test. And it also can be done with ELISA method. It takes 1 day. But the specificity is more with the ELISA than rapid test. Specificity and sensitivity both are more with the ELISA than rapid test. If you have a doubt after doing rapid test when it is not correlating, you can do ELISA. And immunohistochemistry test also can be done to detect the antigen. It takes 2 to 5 days. So now coming to the serological response. In the serological test, usually the paid sera, initially one sera is taken when the patient is examined first time, then another sample after 2 weeks, and to be tested for IgM and IgG. That is done with the ELISA or with HIA, hemagglutinin immunoassay. Time taken is 1 to 2 days, and there is this can be done with nutritional test that takes 7 days, and we have to detect this IgM. We have ELISA method also, okay, and rapid test also. Rapid test, the test is report is available within a minute. ELISA, it takes 1 to 2 days. The IgG is also either with ELISA or with HIA. Takes 1 to 2 days. So what is this? Look at this. When the first infection occurs, IgM response, there is a blue color. The IgM antibody response is very high. That occurs after 6 to 7 days. And the IgG starts happening a little later after 10 days or a bit after 2 weeks. But the response is weak. It is a blue line, see here. In the same person, when the second infection occurs, look at here. Second infection occurs. Look at the blue line. IgM level is less. IgG is very high because there is a memory in his body of this infection. So when the subsequent infection occurs, because there is a memory, IgG immediately it goes up. IgM also comes, but at a lower rate. That's how we diagnose. If IgG titer is very high, it means that it is second infection. If the IgM height is high and no IgG, it is first infection. And how to interpret the different scenarios here? NS1 antigen, IgM and IgG, when they are positive, negative, negative, positive, or in different combination, how to interpret, let us learn. NS1 positive, IgM positive, IgG is negative. NS1, as I have told you, it is present in the early infection, so it shows that is early infection. IgM occurs after sixth day usually. But when both are there, it is the first infection, and the duration is more than 6 days. More than 6 days. When NS1 NS1 antigen is negative, IgM is positive, IgG is negative. First infection, IgM it is. Because NS1 is not there, it is more than 6 days again. The third scenario, NS1 antigen is negative, IgM is negative, IgG alone is positive. It means that there is no recent infection, it is only previous infection. Once a person is infected, IgG will be there for a longer period or for life. It doesn't tell you that is a recent infection or it is a remote infection, a previous infection, or it is second or third or whatever may be. Coming to the next scenario, NS1 is positive, that is recent infection. IgM is also positive, suggesting recent infection. More than 6 days. It tells you more than 6 days. And IgG is also positive. It means to say, fast infection is also there. This is a second infection. The recent infection, that's a second. And there is a remote infection in the past also, because IgG is also positive. Coming to the last one, NS1 antigen is positive, IgM is negative, IgG is positive. This is also tells you this is second infection because IgG is if it is a first one, IgG will not be there. When IgG is there, it is always a second infection. And NS1 is positive, that is a recent infection. That means this is a second infection. It tells you it's second infection. Dengue case management. Early diagnosis, early initiation of fluid management. These are the two things are the cornerstone for good outcome to reduce the morbidity and mortality. Early diagnosis and fluid management. There is no specific drug to use in dengue. It is only the fluid management. Let us see the different types of dengue. We have dengue, probable dengue fever with warning sign, and severe dengue. How to manage all these things? Let us see. A probable dengue is managed with simple careful watch for the development of warning signs. Careful watch. Symptomatic treatment with paracetamol, fluid, plenty of fluids, regular diet, rest. It can be managed at home. If there are, in such cases, look for warning signs. The warning signs are abdominal pain or tenderness, persistent vomiting, clinical fluid accumulation, mucosal bleed, lethargy, restlessness, or liver enlargement more than 2 centimeter, increase in hematocrit, decreasing platelet count. When those warning signs are there, then as follow this flow chart. If warning signs are not there in a dengue case, and there are no comorbid conditions like infancy, pregnancy, obesity, or chronic medical illness, any heart problem, renal problem, then if it is negative, it is dengue without warning signs, it is called as, and they are considered as category A or group A. And these patients can be managed at home with paracetamol and plenty of fluids, regular diet, and rest. In case if there are comorbid condition, though the warning signs are negative, then they are high risk. They are considered as group B and they should be managed in the hospital. They should be managed in the hospital because they have got associated other high risk factors. In case if warning signs are present right from the beginning, then look at warning signs. They are straight away considered as a group B patients. They need hospitalization because they are high risk. And in case if severe dengue is there, warning signs are there, and if there is severe dengue is three, you all know that. One is to say the criteria to say it is severe dengue is the child is in shock, or there is a severe bleeding, or any organ impairment. They are considered as group C. They should be managed on an emergency basis and in an ICU setup. The same thing, this slide, I'll just read out. Group a patient who do not have warning signs and who are able to tolerate adequate volume of oral fluids and to pass urine at least once in 6 hours. Group B, patients with coexisting conditions such as infancy, diabetes, mellitus are existing warning signs. Group C, patients with any of the following: severe plasma leak, severe bleeding, or severe organ impairment. So, coming to the management. As I have told you, there is no specific treatment, it is only fluid management. In a child who was compensated shock, that has not gone into obvious shock, that is, the child is compensating, that is, child is managing to come out from the disease process by many compensation. The shock is not really setting and it is called compensated shock. The child is still fighting to avoid shock. In such circumstances, give 10 ml of fluid, crystallite, over a period of 1 hour and watch for vital signs, heart rate, respiratory rate, and PP. If they come to normal, then give 5 to 7 ml per kg per hour for another 1 hour. And if the vitals are stable after another 1 or 2 hours, you reduce the fluid to 3 to 5 ml per kg per hour. Continue it for 2 to 4 hours. And if child is stable with normal vital signs, then reduce it to 2 to 3 ml per kg per hour or less according to the clinical response. Very simple. On the other hand, if the child is not showing improvement in terms of BP coming up, respiratory rate is coming down, or the pulse rate still tachycardia not coming down, then give one more bolus dose like 10 to 20 ml per kg per hour over a period of 1 hour. And if there is improvement after second bolus, reduce it to 7 to 10 ml and follow the same protocol, reducing sub 5 to 7 and then 3 to 5, then 2 to 3, like that, um, assessing the vital parameters. No improvement and the hematocrit decreases. This indicates bleeding, give blood. This I will discuss in the next slide. So, when the child is in bona fide shock, that is, shock means what? The pulse is not felt, tachycard not felt, or very feeble, blood pressure very low or not recordable. There, you don't have much time. Immediately, you have to give a bolus dose of 20 ml. Quickly, over 15 minutes, this isotonic, that is the crystallite to start with. Colloid is also written, but usually we try with crystallite. See the response. If the child improves with his one bolus dose, then reduce to 7 to 10 ml. Watch for per kg per hour. Watch for 1 to 2 hours. When you assess if the vitals are stable, reduce the fluid to 5 to 7, then subsequently 3 to 5, then reduce it to 3 and continue it as a maintenance. On the other hand, if there is no improvement with the first bolus, you check the hematocrit. Give one more bolus, nothing will happen. But you check the hematocrit. If the hematocrit is rising, not coming down, that means second bolus you have to give 10 to 20 ml per kg over half an hour. And watch. If hematocrit increases high, administer third bolus 10 to 20 ml. And third bolus. Then if the child, but this time when you give the third bolus, usually colloid is given, not the crystallite. So when you administer second bolus, no improvement with the hematocrit rising, that is the thing. If the hematocrit is significant, if the hematocrit is low, consider significant occult or over bleeding. That means if the hematocrit is coming down and child is stable, that is child is improving. Hematocrit is coming down drastically, but child is unstable. BP is not coming up, pulse rate is not coming down, respiratory discharge is not coming down. It means that there is an internal bleeding. So you have to give blood transfusion. Monitoring in shock state, alertness, comfort level, and appetite. Look for the vital signs every 15 to 30 minutes until patient is out of shock, and then second hourly. And serial assessment of the hematocrit. That will give us so whether the child is improving or deteriorating. And look for pleural effusion status, ascites, increasing or decreasing. Urine output 1 hourly. Minimum urine the child should pass is 0.5 ml per kg per hour. If the urine output is more than 2 ml per kg, reduce intravenous fluid. Hematocrit, as I have already told you, rising or persistently high hematocrit with stable vital signs Vital stains are stable. Continue fluids. There is not much panicky state. Decrease in hematocrit with unstable vital signs suggest internal bleeding. Decrease in hematocrit with stable vital signs. Child is improving. Decrease the fluid input. Total intravenous fluid for 24 hours should not be more than double the maintenance. Increasing the respiratory distress, pulse volume low, give collides. High, fluid restriction and diuretics control. Chest X-ray will tell us the conditions. Either pleural effusion is increasing or decreasing, pulmonary edema and other things. Chest X-ray will tell us. When to stop intravenous fluid? Knowing when is critical to dengue management. Definite stop. That is features of intravascular compartment overload. That means high volume pulse, BP is more than normal, or when there is a respiratory distress, then pulmonary edema, hypertension, that is a good volume pulse, breathing difficulties, pulmonary edema, 48 hours after defervescence. Then complications, prolonged and or profound shock. The complications occur if the shock is for because it goes into metabolic acidosis. Then later, because of this acidosis, the chances of DIC is more. Fluid overload. See, if you don't restrict the fluid when the child started recovering, the fluid from the interstitial compartment coming back to the vascular compartment. That time, if you don't restrict the fluid from outside, definitely they go for volume overload. Respiratory distress and failure should be recognized and look for. That means, there may be a fever overload. Multi-organ dysfunction of the liver, kidneys and neurological system, and irreversible shock and death. These are the complications. How to prevent? Avoid mosquito bites through the use of insecticides, repellents, body covering with clothing, screening of the houses, and destruction of mosquitoes' breeding sites. If water storage is mandatory, a tight lid has to be used, or a thin layer of oil to prevent egg laying or hatching. A larvicide such as abate can be used. Recently, people speak vaccine, but not available in the market. And in some countries, the final trials are going on. In short, this is a serious disease if it is not recognized and treated early. If it is recognized and the fluid management is done efficiently, no death can happen. It all depends upon the alertness of the medical staff. We can definitely see no casualties in the management of dengue fever. Thank you.